Hi, everybody. Thanks for being with us still this afternoon. I am very, very excited about this next panel. For you guys who don't know me, I'm Joi Chevalier, and I'm the owner and founder of the Cook's Nook here in Austin. And I am thrilled to have some of my very dear friends and some folks I very much look up to in their work to talk with you next on culinary reclamation through food entrepreneurship. Short version of that, but it's going to be a pretty deep conversation. And I'm going to introduce them, but I'm going to, as always, let them talk about what they do. So first off, I'm going to introduce Adrian. There she is. Oh, and I got Eddie at the same time. Hello, both of you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you.
You're on the west.
Still morning.
The West Coast, everybody. Adrian is here, and well, she's in Round Rock. That's close. It's Austin.
Hey, Miss Adrian.
Oh, I think Adrian, you're muted.
Oh, well, there you go. Long time no see.
I know, long time no see. So let me introduce these guys to you. We have one more guest, and we're waiting for them to be able to get in a little bit of a technical bit. So let me just give you the short version because these guys are just doing so much.
No, I can't hear you, Joi.
Oh, really? You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yes?
I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear Eddie, and I can hear Adrian.
Adrian can't hear me.
And I can hear you guys, so make sure you guys can hear me. Hold on one second, guys. We want to make sure that we've got everybody. All right. So I hear folks that they can hear me, and I can hear Eddie. Eddie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Call and response. What?
I know, right? And then there's Adrian. Make sure Adrian's there. Can you hear us?
Mm-hmm.
You can't hear us?
Yeah. Aw. So, computer audio, perhaps.
Tiffany says she can hear everybody because Tiffany's got that good computer.
It's not my volume.
We can hear you.
I'll figure it out.
We can hear Adrian. Oh, my goodness. We wait till 2 o'clock to have some technical challenges.
I thought I was late.
I know, right?
I was like, ah! But, no, well, see, Joy, yeah, you put in. You're cool. You put in like lead time, like people are starting, like you know. I know.
I got to give you time.
I appreciate that. That's great.
Let's go ahead and get started, and we'll get those guys in.
Yeah, they'll come in for sure.
Let me introduce Austin to you, Eddie. So Eddie is out in Portland. Eddie Hill is, and Eddie has been the leader of Black Food Sovereignty. He's worked Grandma's Hands, the Omni Market Food and Beverage Innovation Laboratory, the ED of Headwaters Concepts. He has been working with academics, with city leaders and government and community, and he is now leading the Culinary Collaboratory. See, I got it right this time. Culinary Collaboratory out there. And Adrian, are you back? Can you hear us now?
I am back and I can hear you.
Yay! And many of you guys will already know Adrian Lipscombe, who is native to our area with her degrees in architecture. She used to have here her 99 Bakery, but then she went massive and opened Uptown Cafe up in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which was amazing, and a food center for understanding that relationship between community and Black African American and Southern food, and having chefs and others come through there, community around Uptown. And then, of course, her very well-known and famous now Kickstarter 40 Acres project, which has raised 6 figures towards creating an African-American cultural center around foodways and agriculture and texts. And she's doing that now in partnership with others called Maloma. Okay, so that's the string of things about you guys, right? Wait, did we get them?
Yep.
Yay! There they are.
TT and TD.
Yay! Come off of mute. And then I will tell you guys about the third set of folks who are here. I'm so excited. That out of Baltimore area, that is Tonya and David Thomas. Can you guys hear us?
Hey, hello everybody.
Hey,
yes, we hear
Hey, what's happening?
I am excited now. So just real quick, I was just introducing, just giving you folks the litany of what you guys do, and you guys came right on. So here they are. Had the beautiful, this is Tonya and David Thomas. They have beautiful Ida B's restaurants. Of course, David is a Chop champion. They have the amazing Heirloom Food Group. They are on Instagram Live every week, you guys, with Modern Soul Conversations. Y'all need to check them out on Instagram with everybody. They are busy. And they are always sharing these foodways and everything with us. And so we have got folks who are leading this conversation very specifically in this story of entrepreneurship and reclamation. And I am glad they are all here all together. All right, you guys ready? So I just gave a list of stuff.
We're all good.
I just gave a list, but I would rather take 2 minutes in your words, talk about that intersection of what you do and why you think it's important. Yes, and I just narrowed you. Okay, I give you 3 minutes, and I'm gonna start. Adrian, don't laugh at me. I'm gonna start with David and Tanya. What is that intersection that you guys think you're doing? You describe what you're doing, and how do you see? I mean, I gave a list, but how do you see the work you're doing in relating entrepreneurship, community, and food? You guys could have just been cooking. You could have had restaurants forever, but that's not what you're doing. You're doing something else. What is that thing you're describing that you guys are now that you're doing?
I like the way he just looked at me. Like, what are we doing? So the Heirloom Food Group is something that we wanted to start. Like you said, we could have just did restaurants, but we wanted to do more than that. Bring something to the industry that's with multiple concepts that in turn can tie into the community in some way. The end result is one of the things that was just recently acquired by our partners and for the Heirloom Food Group is 68 acres of land in Maryland, which about a month ago they just settled on. And now we're working towards what we want to do on that space that would, narrow the footprint between us and food, and then how it circles back into the community. And on top of that, also builds sustainability in the area and jobs as well.
Yeah, and I think if you've been paying attention for the last year, you found that, our food system is just crumbling. And what we're trying to do is to figure out a way, okay, if the food system is impacted by various things, what can we do to take those barriers away from ourselves? So buying land, growing food, creating a distribution system where we get food to us, but out into the community, to other people, whether it's vendors, restaurants, so on and so forth. So those are one of the things we want to do. And then besides that, we've been talking about this reclamation of, our craft. And I talk about this all the time when I talk to people about, Black foodways or American history, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. There would be no American cuisine without the hands of the enslaved Africans. So whenever I talk about food, whenever I think about food, I stand on the shoulders of those ancestors. So whatever we do has to be done in reclaiming that narrative and making sure that we're telling the truth about where food comes from and how it was created. So those are things that are really important to us, and everything that we do encapsulates those things. So we're talking about food, we're talking about our ancestors. We're talking about food, we're talking about building community. When we're talking about food, we're talking about building not just generational wealth, but but a way to sustain an individual family. There are ways that you can grow food yourself and to sustain yourself. And it's just an educational process. You know, we just got to keep talking about it, keep doing this work. And there are a lot of us out here that are doing it. So we're just happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, our keynote this morning was with Karen Washington, you know, Rise and Root Farm. And she talked about, you guys are, to me, all of you are living and embodying the very things that she talked about, which was about collective wealth and individual family and reclaiming that narrative and creating that circle and that cycle that doesn't take from the system that you're creating, it puts it right back in. And so wealth is not just about dollars, but it's also about the other things that you just listed as well, right? You're creating an investment in social capital, and an investment in that community, an investment in the actual farm, the land that creates something that actually that grows over time. Okay, I'm gonna take a chance, but you got 3 minutes, Eddie Hill, to talk about how to. Oh, look at that! 3 minutes. Talk about what does that look like on the West Coast?
I do it in 2:52.
Okay.
So, a lot of the things that are going to be said by other people today and have been promoted wonderfully by you, Joi, are what I've been doing for the last 25 years. So, I'm from Chicago, South Side, in the city. Didn't find out until my 40s what I was supposed to be doing in my life. And luckily I've been doing most of it all my life. So the work that I'm doing on the West Coast, in the Pacific Northwest specifically, I've been doing since I got here in '95 from Oakland, when in Embarcadero, sort of San Francisco, started moving into Oakland and Emeryville. I saw the writing on the wall, so bounced out and moved north and saw a historical gap. So I'm trained as a journalist. I grew up reading the encyclopedias in my room. I got a minute 53. So I have a lot of information, and a lot of that information has transferred into skills and services that have served specifically African Americans in Washington and Oregon. That work morphically has specifically turned me into an urban planner with a land use management focus, a land use designer planner that works with sustainability, energy, all of those systems. I do green water filtration, etc. So out here in the Northwest, I've been helping use those skills to get African Americans and Africans to purchase land, build economy in that space, and sustain themselves through what I call the parable of the sower year. So if anybody read Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower, 2024 starts off some things that we are watching happen because she was right. So a lot of my work in the work, I can talk details, but the spiritual work with 43 seconds, the spiritual work has been what has gotten me into understanding that I'm a farmer, I'm a food systems entrepreneur. I know how to manage large systems with big money. There are not very many people like us in this country right now that can merge and operate at those intersections. And I'm one of those people. That's why I know you. That's why you introduced me to Tanya and David. Good to meet you, Adrian. So I've taken my professional skills that I learned after I grew up with my experience as a veteran, as a person who processed their own PTSD and learned how to heal myself through getting myself back to the land, and understanding Huxtable-like lifestyle that my parents attempted to get me up into. That hasn't worked very well. That's 3 minutes. I'll close it. The failure of the Black middle class to fully actualize itself without returning and healing ourselves to the land is part of our issue. So reconnecting, we are the Gen X and the new Gen and the Y and the new terms. We're all the new folks that were black sheep 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And now, like somebody said earlier, the food system is turned upside down. And now we have the ability to execute work that we've been dreaming about and we've been put up barriers against, and now we're launching. So I'll get to details later, but
we're going to go there. We're going to go there. All right. Thank you, sir. And then on this coast, east, west, third coast, Adrian Lipscombe. Do you want to give him, do you need 3 minutes? 50 seconds. All right, 3 minutes. You tell him, Adrian. You describe, I give a list, but you describe what you think, what you're doing, and how do you describe that intersection?
I think for me, it started back in my education. So I come from a different background. I didn't come from culinary. A lot of people that are on here probably know. I started in architecture. So I have that master's and bachelor's and was doing PhD work in city planning and really looking at the change in behavior towards for land use towards minorities. Like, how are they affected by it? I mean, I think I was a little bit above my time on looking at that information. But it pulled me to look at our food source and really started identifying the gaps that were in there. And a lot of it was, I had to be in those positions, right? So I had to be in those positions where I saw the gap or there was an issue or a problem. So when opening up our restaurant, I opened it in an area that we were talking about revitalization. So we were already looking at an issue. 2, we're looking at an issue of healthy food options within that area. 3, what is that connection to those healthy food options, such as working with farmers and working with other restaurants and working with organizations in that area. So it was things that I had already knew in my educational background how to contact and work with these people, but also I was able to be that translator between the community and working with the city because I knew that language. So it was a little easier for me, and I was able to know which departments I needed to go to, and sometimes knew more than those own departments. So that kind of opened up the door to where I looked back at my own restaurant and said, okay, we are not a restaurant. We're a community impact space. We need to look at it beyond just we're feeding people, but what else are we giving them in the process? What's the knowledge we are giving them in this process? What can we do as a catalyst to help revitalize our community? So, it was a little bit of a lab for things that we were learning to do the same way, but I had to go against a lot of my theory and method of what I was taught because that is not what I knew from my culture. So in hindsight, it had to be the practical moment. There was many theories and things that were not working within the Black community that we learned in college or in a higher level education. And I had to seek more information out there. I had to do critical race theory. I had to do social work courses. I had to go to African American courses. I went to Latino courses. So it was more than just my background in architecture and city planning that got me to where I am today. And also, like I said, it's being immersed in it. It's being immersed in it and realizing what my community need and also listening to them. So it was just beyond the professionalism of the education. It was also listening to who this was really going to be affecting.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Eddie. Were you going to say something?
Adrian, thank you for that. Because that's, after going through being an adult, like I wasn't in my 20s when I went to grad school, but my initial training gave me insight and having understanding of the data, like it's the data, right? So those tables, the ESRI GIS maps. And once you're exposed to that, once I was exposed to what urban planning did to my community when I was in Chicago growing up in the 70s versus the child who went to the Operation Push, urban planning, architecture, it showed me exactly how we have been institutionally, what the laws and the zoning and the architecture designs, architectural principles, how they create a psychosis in us when we go through their programs, and how we operate and perpetuate that supremacy, European and Western supremacy in design and in how we articulate how spaces and places are, that is the root. Like when I went through planning school, it made me a better activist and progressive planner. I already rejected and hated architecture and standard urban planning because it was Euclidean and worked against us constantly. It was built to destroy us. So, and when we try to build on that system, just like you said, Adrian, it doesn't work. Why not? Because we at our core foundational teachings, we have flawed designs because they work against us. So then therefore we work against ourselves.
So what are these things that are in opposition? Is it how we own, how we share? What is it that, what is in opposition to those things that you guys are now doing? Is it collectivism? What are those principles that you're now doing that go back to the earliest days of when Black people came here?
Can I say something real quick, Adrian, and then I'll stop.
Sure. Yeah.
So if everybody in business thankfully knows, or not thankfully, might know triple bottom line. Mm-hmm. Okay, so triple bottom line economy, right? People, environment, and money, profit, right? Or so where it has evolved is now quadruple bottom line. Right. Is people, economy, or wealth building, right? This is like post policy link, wealth building, collective impact, Ujima, Boston. So now that culture and spirit have been added to the triple bottom line, and we have what we were doing in the beginning. Black and brown people on the planet have been putting culture in business since business started, the beginning of commerce. So if we had economies and we had principles and things that ran Timbuktu and other places that worked, then now that we have culture and spirit linked to the dominant economic theories, then we're now able to operate in a flipped environment, which you see a lot of us now building things. $20 million, $30 million projects are not beyond our ability to immediately step into, nor do we have a lack of architects, urban planning engineers, or culinary professionals who've liberated their minds that are ready to do this work.
Right, but there's something different about it, because there's still a handful who are talking this way and speaking this language, going about it differently in their businesses, which is why we're having these conversations, right? They are yoking things together that still even the dominant culture struggles with and approaches, right? We're still not seeing that kind of funding being tossed at these businesses who still approach in this way necessarily. Hey guys, right? So what is this thing that's now being brought in, which is where I was about to ask, right? You know, and thanks for that, because you talk about it. What is it we're going back to, or what is it that you're challenging that's in your work? That's what I'm saying. What is that thing and the way that you've approached it?
I think for me in my work, and especially with 40 Acres, it took community. Yes, it took like-minded people that understood what I was going for and what I was trying to achieve to help move that forward. And it was, to me, it was simple. It was something I woke up and I said, boom, this is what we need to do. And then it was like, will everybody get it? Mm-hmm. How do I make it in a language that everybody understands without diluting the purpose of this, and really being honest and being blunt and telling the history? Like, if you saw my work, I was telling you the history. I was telling you the violence. I was telling you the sad stories. I was telling you how we got where we are today, to which we don't have, we have a minute 1% of Black farmers in the United States. Something happened, something went wrong, to the point that, you know, I was getting just the normal person that eats at my restaurant understanding to getting to USDA understanding. So it was straight communication between all flow, but also keeping that vision straight, like just knowing exactly what my mission was and what I was going to be able to achieve. Did it change? Did it diverge? Did it move? Sure, it was organic, right? Because my idea started with purchasing Black land to now it is a heritage center, working with Tanya and David and doing the Maloma. It's also talking more and aggressively about our food and our food chain supply. It is also working, you know, World Central Kitchen, bringing other people involved in this, because it has a common denominator in which we're coming down to, and it has come down to the land, the ingredients, the root of it. And then, you know, my hindsight is to the plate, right? To that person's stomach, to understand that process and how does it get there. So for me, it did take community, but it also took to understanding the players in the game, right? Let's be honest, right? I could not have done this work alone just with our Black community, because we had people that were above us, that were above the glass, that were sitting there with the money, that were sitting there with the income, that were sitting there with the sponsorship, and that we have to talk in such a language as in code switching to be able to have this conversation with them, to be able to be on the same page, to really understand the need of what we need to do for our community, which should have been a common sense. It should have been purpose knowledge. And it was to the point, like me laying it out, like in a book, and like for kids to understand, this has happened, this happened to this, and this is how we got here. And what we saw was the food chain supply. It was broken, y'all. It wasn't like there's a piece here missing. It was like the whole Jenga piece got pulled, and we got pulled out of it. So it fell. The Jenga, it fell. And now we have an opportunity to reimagine what our food system and our food chain can look like. And we can build a stronger foundation and building blocks, even if we have to move some things around, but we have to understand the structure, the bottom of it. How does it hold together? And how do we make this still continue up in a form that everybody is receiving a piece of the pie and it's equitable across the board?
Right. Now that David and Tanya back, I'm going to give them a chance to jump in here. I see y'all change rooms. So
I apologize for that.
Oh, no, you're perfectly fine. The question was that in order to do what you're doing, you have reached back to some belief or practice, or brought something else into a mechanism. And I'm asking, what was that? What was that thing? And Adrian said it was community. She brought community into that work. And I was asking, what was that for you guys?
I want to make sure I get the question correct. What was the question?
Yeah. So what we were sort of talking about was that these approaches of trying to intersect a variety of things together to create this business, this entrepreneurship, this reclamation that you're doing, often harkens back to notions of ownership or sharing or wealth building or growing in ways that seem antithetical or counter to modern notions of capitalism and ownership, and the mechanisms we have today, right?
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what are those things that you've reintroduced, or old places you've gone back to, or older concepts maybe, or things that were inherently part of Black culture that you pulled out and are now visible in what you're doing, right? And if you can,
I think you just said it when you just said, what did we reach back to, or old practices, or things that were already inherently things that we did. I think it was just really just bringing that back in our lives. I guess you could say that. So a lot of people saying was going back to the land. We really was always, or there's been a misconception that, we were taught to plant and grow. We weren't taught that. We knew how to do that, which is one reason why we were born here in the first place, because we had that knowledge. And I think it's us having that understanding of that this was always something that was innate in our being in the first place. So really, we're just going back to the roots of everything.
Right.
Adrian made a good thing. Community, of course, is always a strong component for anybody to make that accomplishment. Whether it's community of, your local community, or your state, or your region, the community of, I guess you could say our culinary community and the support. but the community of family as well, and bringing that understanding back to everyone around us, understanding that this is not possible unless we do work this all together as a family.
Yeah.
It might not be blood related, but we're all family, and we have to build that connection as such, and have an understanding that, you know, no one is taken for anyone else in getting this accomplished. You know, we're not going to be able to do this or have the support unless we all work together to do this.
It's not zero sum at all in the conversation. Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I just saw a comment. Tiffany Washington said it was legacy, and most of the people here on this platform know that that was like my word for 2020. What 2020. A word to take with me, like at the beginning of January and December, as I always have a word, and that was my word last year, was legacy. And I'm not doing this for myself, right? I'm looking about our future, right? We are just stewards of these properties of land, because once we're gone, that land is still going to be there. Yep. And so what is going to happen after we leave? And as stewards of Maloma and of different properties, we're looking beyond ourselves. We're thinking about our future. We're thinking about our children. We're thinking about our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, our society, right? Our Black community, our BIPOC community, is how can they still have a space in this world to be able to continue on and feed each other. I don't know if it's mind-blowing to anybody that we're having a conference about feeding people.
Yeah.
Like, it's mind-blowing to me that we're having a conference to talk about how do we feed people, in which it should be a given right? So this is, and I mean, just step back. It's just like what we're trying to do is feed people. What we're trying to do is get people access to land to feed themselves and to feed others.
Pretty basic, huh?
It's pretty basic, right? You know, it's like, how can I give you access to land? And it always comes down to the bottom line. It comes down to money. And then if you look, and I am going to go back and I'm going to preach a little bit. If you go back and you look at how 40 Acres was put together, and you look at the statements of General Sherman coming together with the 21 Black leaders, which were mostly pastors. Right. One of the questions he asked, number 12, was like, what do you want? And one stood up and said, we want land. Yeah. Because they understood the power of it beyond just ownership. It was bringing in community, be able to create a business, have an identity, be able to feed others, to be sustainable, to provide a legacy. Why do you think lands are named after the last names of the past generations? Yeah. It was to create that legacy. Yeah. And also, this is food, right? It's just over time, we have commercialized this. We have given it power, and companies have given it the power that now they decide what we eat, what type we eat, type of tomatoes we eat, right, on a regular basis, what literally has pushed into season and what's not in season, versus really understanding we're just trying to feed each other. And I think with the food chain supply being broken, this is our opportunity to create a better foundation, because we saw during this that companies were wavering, that they were falling apart, that they couldn't serve our community the way that they promised they would for the bottom line price. And you started seeing the consumer going directly to farmers. They were cutting out that middleman, which leaves them very scared. Very scared.
Yeah, it does. It did totally. When they realize that folks can figure out methods and means of being sufficient, that's very frightening.
That was survival. Yeah. That was survival. That was us being survival. But it still was limited on who had access.
Yeah,
it was limited on who had the ability and who had the money to be able to have a short system access to reach these people that were making food for us, in which they weren't making enough food for us, because they were even cut out of the economy and the system on making food for the nation or for their own community and being able to provide for their community.
Nope, you're absolutely right.
We are having issues right now in schools, where school districts and their food chain supply is broken. It's not even that it's the the school's food chain supply. It is our food chain supply. Right. And you're finding those companies and vendors breaking their contracts because they're not able to provide the food, or they're not going to get that bottom line they thought they were going to get in the 80s when they decided to make the pyramid and do the food pyramid all over again, and that they thought they were going to capitalize off of feeding our kids.
I was going to say, Adrian, I'm going to let Eddie get in here too real quick. I had to bug you here because we were going to run out of time, but I want to make sure.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, I know. I had a very large broadliner basically tell me that they were not in a position to provide the Cook's Nook with its regular food access. They actually could not deliver us, and they asked us to wait 6 weeks. And this is a major broadliner. Yeah, broadliner is one of your large, huge, massive food distribution services companies. They just
supply chain right now. Yeah,
it's Eddie, did you want to jump in on something Adrian was saying? I just want to be mindful of time because I'm sure there's plenty of questions too. So there's a ton of questions, you guys.
Yeah, I just, you know, like I was saying before, when you got me introduced to Tanya and David, we need to have this conversation every week. You know, I mean, just on because like there is. And, you know, like I'm sticking out of the, you know, what I've done and what I'm doing. There's a lot of stuff we're doing. And if you're a person of color and you have technical skills and you actually know what you're doing, please move to Oregon and Washington soon, because there's a lot of money and there's not a lot of us. Right. Yeah. So what you're saying is exact and on point. Like there is at the folks, only the people who can operate at the intersection. When people talk about intersectionality, am I still on?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so this conversation needs to deepen about intersectionality and what that means, and what interdisciplinary means, right? Because the five of us have been doing it. Like we have been interdisciplinary people and Adrian said it earlier, by survival. I didn't choose to do 42 different jobs in the last 20 years because I wanted to. I did it because the ancestors, one, were in my ass and told me to do it. Two, is what they told me when I was on mushrooms and I needed to, they got a mission. You know, I'm going to say that it's legal up here.
I'm just, okay.
Still asylum and PTSD. I'm a veteran. It's Veterans Day. So Veterans Day. And it's helping us as veterans. I'm not being overly humorous about it.
No, you're absolutely right.
It helps us in today's Vet Day. I'm a vet. So I'll speak from that position. Back to the community conversation. The ability to operate at the intersection of all of these issues is where those of us who've been seeing it, just like Octavia Butler wrote Parable back in 94, 93, or 92. If you look at the trends, if we as Black people have paid attention to, like Will Allen, he was partially right. You got to have multiple products. The people who did land work, you know, you have to have some land. Okay, you have to have distribution and transportation. So now, instead of talking about growing Black farmers out here, I'm talking about growing Black distributors, truck drivers, supply chain, cold storage, food processing, manufacturing, packaging, freezer. If we had freezers, if Black folks had just turned their community center and urban league leased out, not owned buildings and the refrigerators and held contracts for government to freeze food and vaccinations, we could have gotten another $30-40 million in the community in any given city at any given time. So we have to outthink the food system, or think out of the box with food system, and outthink folks who are depending on the system going back to normal. There will be no normal. Restaurants will drive around in trucks. We will have people selling vegetables out their trunk, and it'll be legal. It's time to go South Africa. Like, we need to just be like all markets, I'm the market, all channels, all systems, you know, and stop hesitating, thinking that our lives are dependent on and attached to inextricably to the dominant population. Right. Those days are over.
I'm gonna let Tanya and David go. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to piggyback on what Eddie said. He's absolutely right. I mean, he's absolutely right. Listen, we cannot consider going back into the way we've been doing this before. One, let's first be honest. It has never been equitable for Black folk, brown folk, or people of color, right? Never been equitable. And if we go back to the very beginning, this country would have never survived, thrived, or anything else if it wouldn't been the backs of Black folk not only growing the food, but then taking out of the land, taking it into the kitchen and cooking it. Then from there, we created a cuisine that we've been shut out of and never been given the credit for creating. I mean, this thing goes way, way back. And if you think you're going to solve this problem by talking to bureaucracy and trying to figure out ways to work within their system, you are absolutely wrong. You're kidding yourself. This has to be recreated from the ground up. And if we are not involved in that process, we're going to find ourselves right back here again in less than I don't know how many years.
Oh,
I mean, it's a fact.
If we don't act, sorry, feedback.
He's saying 5. You're probably right, Eddie.
I think it's.
You think 3? Yeah, in all honesty, listen, I don't even know if we can fully recover from this the way we currently are. Everybody knows, we all know, supply chain is a mess. I've been doing business with one company for over 10 or 11 years. They have consistently disappointed me within the last month. And there's nothing that they can do about it. There's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, and when you hear an executive actually say, I need you to do me a favor, I've never had to say this, can we just stop bringing you product for 6 weeks? We just need to stop.
Wow.
I mean, and this is going beyond just food, right? So we're talking about, we're also talking about staffing, employment, beyond distribution. We're talking water. I mean, right now, sugar is an issue. Getting sugar is starting to be an issue. I mean, flour, and you saw how the public reacted to the lack of this ingredient or when Tyson took their big ad out and, people were buying chicken and people are like stealing. And it was like it was Black Friday or the day after Christmas where everybody was in there trying to buy a bag of flour, a flour, And so, I mean, right now, like I said, we got to go back to the roots. Like I said, it's an ugly job, but we got to go down to the foundation and build it right back up. And I think what has happened is causing us to do that, but it's also a good thing, right? Because we can't live how we were living 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't working. It was getting worse.
Yeah.
And it was like slowly dying. And when COVID and the pandemic and the epidemic, you might as well bring in what was happening in Minneapolis at the same time, and politics and race and racism was occurring. It was hitting a wall. We tore it down.
Yeah.
We have to build it right back up again. And it's going to take leaders that you are going to see today and that you've already heard and what you're hearing now to formulate and to come together and look at what is working within our communities and how can we replicate this? How can we move this? How can we change this? Because I'm going to tell you, people at USDA, they're asking us. Yeah. They're finally asking us, what can we do?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
How can we replicate this?
Yep.
They're asking us for answers to problems that we hardly even knew were happening at the time. Yeah. So in other cities. Yeah. So it is a prime time to start having this conversation. And I know, Austin, I know y'all are on here, City of Austin. Hey, and y'all haven't seen me in a while, but y'all are going to see me a lot more because this is a larger issue at hand. And especially within the community that I come from and only just to watch it keep happening and watching it to this point. I've watched it happen since starting my degree and been forewarning and saying something. And now we're here.
Yep. Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So I'm going to hold you guys because you guys know we could talk about this forever and go all kinds of directions. We did not get to talk about. We did not get to talk about decolonizing your business and what does that look like. We did not get to talk about a whole bunch of things, but we are out of time. So I want to check real quick to see if there are any questions out there because it's kind of intense and deep. Jessica, you guys, were there any questions real quick? Folks are probably sitting in their chairs going.
Yeah, take a look at our websites too. I mean, you know, Tonya and David got a whole bunch of stream. I know Adrian got. I'm gonna look at your stuff, Adrian. And
yeah,
then
you
if
guys
you Google me in Portland, you're gonna find out somebody hating. So you know, you can.
Somebody say. So this.
No.
Well, okay. So real quick, I am going to let each of them, and we're going to run just a tad over. I'm going to give you guys each a moment to sort of wrap this up and say, what do you want? What do you want folks to know right now about this gap, this opportunity, this moment? What can they do, and what lesson can they take from you? And I'm going to start with Tonya and David. What? Sorry, did I just put y'all on the spot? What can?
Yes, you always do this. Okay.
Because y'all are our leaders. What? Can
yeah, what? You said we
y'all
are
our leaders.
Oh, that's what you're trying to say.
Leaders.
We old folks.
I said leaders, elder, y'all leaders. What can folks?
Like he said, old folks.
He said old folks. What can we take and learn watching you guys in this weaving of your businesses, your culinary and professional backgrounds, and this reclaiming of a narrative that you're running through this? What can we take from you today and walk away with in our for-profit, nonprofit, and community work?
Wow. I mean, from us,
that's like a big.
I mean, yes.
I know.
But listen. I just think it's we need to be passionate about our people and about food. If we want to survive, we have got to be in the conversation instead of on the outside looking in. We've got to be a part of it. We've got to engage. We've got to buy land. Let me say that one more time. We need to buy land. I'll say it a third time. Buy land wherever you can. And if you buy some land, grow something on it. If you're not willing to grow on it, lease it to somebody else who can grow something on it. It's that serious, people. It really is. And we need to be looking at renewable ways of energy to support this whole thing. It's just so much that goes into this. I just want people.
I didn't even get to have a conversation about climate change in the middle of
it.
It's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, ma'am. Eddie, I'm gonna let you go in the middle.
Funding. Don't be afraid of money. You know, 50 million is the same as $5 right now. So, like literally, there's people on the Senate floor. Like if you aren't offended, and you know, at this point, then you know, like for real, like MIT and Harvard have free online history classes about America, and then you can take a class and be like newly offended, like you probably weren't. We weren't allowed to be offended in 8th grade. So I'd say keep reading books about actual history in the United States, and come to have your Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad moment, and then get up and start fresh, you know, tomorrow morning, realizing that one, the government is asking us to save ourselves. The government is us. We are the government of the people. That is their default. They're a business. They will say, you said it was for the people and y'all didn't run it. So it's time to run it. It's time to get our money. It's time to get our politicians to give us the money that we have approved already for COVID relief and the Black farmers stuff. And the things that you have been, whatever you've been hesitating on, like we collectively, individually, everybody's not going to make it. All Black folks ain't kin folks. All Mexicans don't support Mexico. So let's realize that half the planet is against us. It's good and bad. Either you got good ideas or you got bad ideas. And good ideas mean you're moving forward to the future and we're going to survive. Bad ideas means we're moving forward with some stuff that should have been cut long time ago. So time to let it go.
Let it go. Adrian, you will have the last word, and then I'll go right after you.
Well, I think I want people to know that you can reach out to any of us to have this conversation, look at the precedents of programs that are already existing, find out how you can connect, and also how you can connect to your city, your government, because again, we are the people, right? So voting makes a difference. It really does.
Yeah.
So get out and vote, tell your people to vote, but also be part of your city. Don't sit on the sidelines. Be part of your city. Be vocal. Work with your community. Work with your city to understand your needs. And when they don't get it, you make the space.
All right. First off, I have to tell all three of you guys, you know, you inspire me. I love all three of you guys, all four of you, all three boxes, all three boxes, 1, 2, 3, immensely. And your work, it continues to edify me when I'm still in my little dark corners, you know, thinking about throwing myself off a ledge. So I thank you muchly. Real quick, where can you find them? These guys are online everywhere. They are on Instagram. They are on Facebook. They are on LinkedIn. These guys will absolutely respond. You're going to see them again next year when we have this conversation again next year. We'll talk about it at closing remarks. Thank you, guys. Breakout sessions are coming up next. And then we'll have closing stuff after that. Thank you, guys.